Welcome back. We are continuing our study in the Gospel of John in chapter 18. Praise the Most High. As we continue our study, we just finished first 11 verses of John chapter 18. Let's go to where we finished, John chapter 18. And of course, we were dealing with drinking the cup of the Father's fury. We were talking about that the Messiah explained to Kapha that the Father has given him the cup of fury to drink. And he was going to drink that cup on our behalf, on behalf of his Hebrew brethren. Now, because we rejected that sacrifice initially, the Father gave us the cup to drink, as he said he was going to do in Daniel chapter 9. That because of our rejection of the Messiah, that the city was going to be destroyed. The city of New Jerusalem, the city of Jerusalem was going to be destroyed. And as Messiah himself said in Luke chapter 21 and verse 24, talking about us, our forefathers that rejected Messiah. Luke chapter 21, beginning at verse 24. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations. And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. So we were the people that he was saying, woe unto them in that prophecy, because we were the people that rejected him. And he said, we're going to fall by the edge of the sword and shall be led away captive into all nations, that is, among Gentiles, which again, all of the prophets of the Old Testament say that, and we were fulfilling that in this particular, the difference between this particular captivity and all the previous ones. We were going to be completely banished from the land. The city was going to be destroyed, and we were not just going into captivity as Daniel and his fellows were in Daniel. We were going into slavery, chattel slavery, where the fulfillment of Deuteronomy 28:64 is. In fact, let's take a look at that. Deuteronomy 28:64, the fulfillment of prophecy with respect to us after Daniel chapter 9. So Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 64 says, let me get there. And verse 28, verse 68. Let me start at 64 though, because it does give a good context. So Deuteronomy chapter 28, beginning at verse 64 and going down to verse 68. And Yahweh shall scatter thee among all people from one end of the earth even unto the other. And there thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone. Among these nations thou shalt find no ease, neither shall the sole of thy foot have rest. But Yahweh shall give thee there a trembling heart and failing of eyes and sorrow of mind. And thy life shall hang in doubt before thee, and thou shalt fear day and night, and shall have none assurance of thy life. In the morning thou shalt say, would Yahweh that we were at even, and at even thou shalt say, would Yahweh it were morning, for the fear of thine heart wherewith thou shalt fear, and for the sight of thine eyes which thou shalt see. Verse 68. And Yahweh shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt not see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. Now, let me break this down. First, it says we will be scattered, which we have been, obviously, and we'll be living in a state of fear. Classic example of this is that, in the United States of America, if your child is of age to drive, it's your child, your daughter or your son, and they could drive, do you have to explain to them how to handle themselves when a police officer pulls them over? Do you have to explain to them, listen, if you get pulled over, this is what you should do. You have why? Because you know they could get shot, they can get murdered by simply being pulled over by a police officer. Let me ask you, do white families have to do that? Do white families have to explain to their son or their daughter, when you get pulled over, this is how you should handle yourself? No, why not? Because there's no fear of getting murdered by getting pulled over. Okay, therein lies the difference. We have fear of being murdered or our loved ones being murdered, unarmed, and not committing a crime. That fear is based on Deuteronomy chapter 28. Now, thing is, it says, thou shalt go into Egypt again. Again, we know Egypt has a dual meaning in the Bible. The first meaning, if you look it up in the Hebrew, is the word Mizraim. Mizraim is the second son of Ham, his second son. Cush, Mizraim is the second son, Put, and then Canaan. So Mizraim is Egypt, but also it's used in this. I am Yahweh, thy most high, which brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. That's right. So you're going to return to bondage again in ships. And he said, by the way, I said unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. This is what he said in Exodus 14, when he said, the Egyptians that you see today, you'll see them no more again forever. So he's saying you're going to be free forever from these. And he said, now, although I told you that, you're going to be going back into bondage. Then he said, no man shall buy. And the word you is italicized in verse 68. It says, and no man shall buy. What does that mean? No man shall redeem you from slavery. You're going to be in what we call chattel slavery. So that the slavery that we were going to get entered into as a result of the curse of Daniel chapter 9 and of Luke chapter 21 for rejecting the Messiah was chattel slavery. So we were going to be kicked off our land. We were going to be scattered among the heathen. And we're going to be in the worst form of captivity that we have ever experienced, that haven't been in Egypt, haven't been in Babylon, haven't been in the Medes and the Persians, the Assyrians, the Philistines, haven't been under the Romans and the Greeks. This is the worst one. Okay? That's what that meant. It did not mean, of course, that he was casting off his chosen people forever. It just meant we were going to go through this period, a very long period, as Daniel was showing. The time is long, of chattel slavery, where we were going to be treated like animals, where we were going to be in prison, where we were going to be cruelly oppressed. And we have drunk that cup. Okay. Now, an argument mentioned in the last section, our awakening of us drinking that cup in terms of understanding why we drank the cup is the turning point when which our enemies are now going to get the cup, until, like Messiah said in that verse, until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. Now, we noted in the last section that it was the scribes and Pharisees that sent out officers to arrest Messiah, that it was our own cousins who arrested him. Okay, now that means that among the people of the bloodline, there were enemies of the Messiah. Pretty clear, right? That among people of the bloodline, there were enemies of the truth, enemies of the Father. And Messiah said, if you hate me, you hate him that sent me. Praise the Most High. And if they don't follow Moses, they're not going to follow you, although you rose from the dead. So now we have to understand that there are enemies among us. And in the thumbnail, you start to see some of them. What do they have in common? Well, first, let's look at the real deal. Okay, the real deal, Holyfield. What do I mean? When somebody is really a threat to Asatan, he gets murdered. When somebody's a real threat, action gets taken. When you're not a threat, not only will no action get taken, you'll get paid. Okay? When somebody's not a threat, not only will no action be taken against them, they'll get paid. So again, let's go through the list. Marcus Garvey, deported. Okay. No problem with Elijah Muhammad, though. But one rose up from among their ranks, Malcolm X, murdered. Medgar Evers, murdered. Martin Luther King, murdered. Fred Hampton, murdered. Okay. Khalid Abdul Muhammad, poisoned. They said it was an aneurysm, murdered. We ain't buying that. We ain't buying it. Murdered. Now, what about those that haven't got murdered? Well, recently, dearly departed Reverend Jesse Jackson. Was he murdered? Did he get paid? What about Louis Farrakhan? Has he been murdered? Did he get paid? What about Al Sharpton? Man, shoot. Al Sharpton had his own television station. I mean, not station, television program. He had his own program. Not murdered. He got paid. And there's other coons. So the coons get paid. And let me ask you, were the scribes and Pharisees getting paid? Were they profiting from being coons? See, so it's not hard, brethren. It's not hard. So the people that are faking the funk will always be faking the funk for themselves. They'll look like they are. They look like us. They might even sound like us. But the truth is, when they're no threat, they get paid. When they're no threat, they get paid. So Fred Hampton was murdered, right? And later on, it came out that J. Edgar Hoover of Alphabet Soup FBI said, we want to prevent the rise of a black messiah. And so in response to that memorandum that now is very well known in public information, they actually murdered. Like, it wasn't like Fred Hampton walked down the wrong street. It wasn't like he took up arms to have a gunfight against the police. He was in his bed asleep. In fact, he was drugged into a deep sleep by a coon. And they came in and shot up his apartment. And when they didn't kill him in the shooting, they went into the apartment, him being dead asleep because of the drugs, and shot him in his head to make sure he was dead. And that's according to eyewitness accounts. So when you're a threat, you get murdered. Did Fred Hampton get paid? Was he living in some palace? Did they come kill him in his luxury apartment in Chicago? Was he in some penthouse luxury apartment that they came and murdered him? No, he was in a tenement with walls so thin they was like paper, and over 100 bullets came through those walls. See? No, the brother was sacrificing himself for his people. Malcolm X still smelled like smoke from his burning house when he went out to Detroit to speak the week before he was murdered. Today is the 61st anniversary of the murder of Malcolm X. Today. 61 years ago, he was murdered in Harlem at the Audubon Ballroom. So he wasn't out for self. The Nation of Islam was taking his house. They were in court to take his house, and then they burned the house down with his wife and his children in it. Did anybody burn down Louis Farrakhan's house in Chicago or Elijah Muhammad? Did anybody burn their house down? Did anybody kill their children? So, brethren, you could always spot them. It's not hard. Don't go by what they say. Look at them. See what's going on. Look at what's happening. Okay? Look at what's happening. Khalid was a threat. Obviously, he did not fulfill his days. Okay? Obviously. So you could always tell, because the enemy wants to kill those that are a threat to his control over minds. And let this sink in. The most important minds to be controlled on the planet is the mind of the Hebrew. They're very concerned about us uniting as Hebrews. They're very concerned. Okay, very concerned. Okay, Martin Luther King was a coon at first, but when that Vietnam War came, and there were two things that when I looked at his story that awakened him. Number one, he noticed that the Vietnam War was targeting black males, that they were targeting black males to be drafted to go to that war. Okay, and they were using propaganda of hate to try to let it seem like we were anti-American because we didn't want to fight for this country, when we had always fought for this country from the Revolutionary War, and it never benefited us. So then Martin Luther King started speaking against the war, and that was a money-making operation for the U.S. government. Number two that woke him up is when he realized all of this talk about lifting us up by our own bootstraps. And he realized that all of the Europeans that came here from foreign countries got help from the government from the beginning. Some of them were given land. Talking about 40 acres. Some of them were given land, given equipment, given loans, given free schooling, and all of that. And he said, these are the ones telling us to lift ourselves up by our bootstrap. And that's why he said, we're going to have another march. He was planning another march a month before he was murdered. And he said, why are we going to this march? He said, we coming to get our check. Boom, disaster. Boom, disaster. As soon as he said that, we coming, he said, to get our check. When he found out what they did for the white folks that came here from Europe and what they refused to do for us, he said, we coming to get our check. Boom, disaster. Okay, disaster. That was it. So, brethren, we understand what it's going to cost because we see what it cost Messiah. The servant is not greater than his master. So we know if you speak in truth, you're an enemy and they're going to want to shut you up. There's no doubt about it. If you're not speaking truth, not only will you not be an enemy, they will pay you. Why? Because they want you to keep speaking. If you're not a threat to them, you listen. If you're not a threat to them, you are a threat to us. It cuts both ways. Okay? If you're not a threat to them, you are a threat to us. It's very simple. Okay, if you're not a threat to us, if you are an agent for the Father Yah to bring us together, to awaken us, then you are a threat to them because they don't want that. Nothing has changed, brethren. We are just now at this point in Revelation, as we know, we're in Revelation 7, where the instruction is given, hold the winds. And the instruction was given, indicating, as we know from chapter 6, that the Father is ready to send his Son to come get us. But he wants to wait until his last day, 144,000 are sealed. So right now, the Father is holding everything off. That is why they would want to kill us. They would want to, but the Father is not allowing it. See, this is different. This is different. See, now it's the end. And not only is it the end, unlike Brother Malcolm, unlike Brother Khalid, unlike Brother Hampton, unlike Martin Luther King, unlike Medgar Evers, we done come to a higher level of knowledge. Not only do we know why we are here and understand how we got here, we also know how they are about to drink the cup. It's different. It's a different vibe right now. Okay? And so he is keeping us only for the sense that he's training us. Like the 3.5 years, the Messiah trained the disciples. They were with him 3.5 years, and he kept them. Remember, we just read it in his prayer. I have kept them. They have received thy word. He's been teaching them 3.5. The Father is now teaching us. 3.5 years, we're being taught. Okay? And we're being prepared for the last movements. It's going to be power against power. The power of the Father's word through us and their military armaments and government powers. It's going to be power against power. And all we got is our Father. But guess what? That's all we need. Okay? That's all we need. Praise the Most High. So now we see that the same coons that are the enemies that were, and listen, these coons are down with the Romans, right? They're down with the Romans. And you're gonna see it. They working together, and nothing has changed. The Romans at that time is still, as we know, Daniel 2's prophecy with the statue. Rome is all the way to the end, but now we understand Rome is being represented in Christianity. That's what's being represented. It's through Christianity that the Europeans have occupied, taken over, slaughtered people, and taken their land. As Daniel 11 tells us, they have divided the land for gain. Let's go through it just for our friends who may not understand what I'm talking about, but are hard. They don't want to know the truth, but they got to swallow this bitter pill if they want to be saved. Let me start with United States and Canada. The United States became into existence from Europeans, mostly from Britain, under the subject of the King of Britain. They came here. There were already people here, Indians. They declared them to be heathens, and they murdered them and took their land. Canada first came the British, then came the French. Well, so the French came first, then the British. But anyway, they did the same thing to the Indians there. And we, the Hebrews, became pawns, so that to win our favor, Canada was offering us freedom before the United States was. So many of us were fleeing to Canada because we were political pawns. That's what Europeans do when they fighting each other. Then another group of Europeans from France went and took the whole northwest section of Africa. The whole northwest section of Africa now speaks French. Mali, Senegal, Côte d'Ivoire, they all speak French. Cameroon, they all speak French. Then, of course, they started moving on islands like Haiti. The Haitians fought them off, and because of that, to this day, the whole white world hates Haiti, led by the United States of America. Then a group of Spanish men went into the Caribbean and discovered islands, discovered Cuba, Puerto Rico, discovered Dominican Republic, discovered islands, and killed the Indians that was there and took over the islands and profited from them, mostly in sugar. Then the British, following up from the people the white people that took over this country, they went to the islands and they discovered Jamaica. Yeah, I'm using the word discovered very loosely. St. John's, Bahamas, St. Thomas, Barbados, and killed the people that was there and took over their land. Then the Belgians and the Dutch and the Belgians, the same kingdom of the Netherlands, they came down to Africa and they killed the Hebrews that was there and took over their land and made the Hebrews slaves and created what they call Africana. Then the British, the people that were so incorrigible that they couldn't handle them in British prisons, they sent them to this new land they discovered called Australia, where they killed the Indians and Aborigines and took over their land. Australia. All of them were European Christians. All of them. All of them. But wait, the Portuguese left Portugal, came to the west coast of Africa, took a little piece of land there, the Congo, and then took tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of us and brought us to another land in South America they call Brazil. And they killed the Indians that was there and took their land. The Spanish said, "Oh, that's a good idea." And they took the other part of that same land and went across to what is now Central America and Mexico. Christians all. And you wonder why we call y'all colonizers? And you think that this was righteous, what you did? The Bible said you divided the land for gain. And it's a God that your fathers knew not. Let's explain this. The Bible does talk about gods of wood and stone, and we talk about the stone in Saudi Arabia that they worship called Mecca, and we talk about the wooden cross that they like to hang everywhere, right? But what the devil did was slick. He was slick, y'all. What he did with Christianity was slick. Well, look, we serve the Creator that abides in the thick darkness, right? He cannot be seen, but we see his works. So what did the devil do? He created an unseen God too. Like he has symbols of his God all over the place and saints and all that, but he created an unseen God for Christianity. An unseen white Jesus. He made paintings and all that, but it's an unseen God. And he created, and that's different from all the rest. See, they used to worship Moloch and Baal, right? They have symbols for that. Moloch and Baal and the sun god, that they could actually see the sun, right? They worship all that. Okay, the goddess of fertility, the Easter eggs, the bunny rabbits, right? You could see all that. But then when they created Christianity, they made an unseen God. The devil made his own self into an unseen God. A God which his fathers knew not. Okay, so he tried to create one after the order of the Father. A white one, a European one, with their own doctrines and everything. Then they took part of the Father's word and based their religion on it. And said, oh, the other parts, the parts that will reveal who we really are, that's done away with. That's done away with. Don't think about that. Our white Jesus nailed all of those stuff to the cross. You don't even have to look at that. Don't look at that. Okay. There you go, brother. Slick, isn't it? Slick. So now, John 18, Messiah getting ready to drink the cup for us. We wasn't even, that's why Paul says, while we were yet sinners, Messiah died for us, because we weren't coming. There was a few of us, even the ones he had close to him, left him there, ran, left him. Okay. So now let's start where we left off. John chapter 18, beginning at verse 11. Then said YHWH unto Peter, put up thy sword into the sheath. The cup which my Father hath given me, shall I not drink it? Then the band and the captain and officers of the Jews took YHWH and bound him and led him away to Annas first, for he was the father-in-law to Caiaphas, which was high priest that same year. So you had two people sharing power and money in the religion of the Jews. Annas, who had been, but still was in power, and then Caiaphas, who was the high priest, and they was related. It was in the family. Verse 14. Now Caiaphas was he which gave counsel to the Jews that it was expedient that one man should die for the people. And Shimon Kepha followed YHWH, and so did another disciple. That disciple was known unto the high priest, and went in with YHWH into the palace of the high priest. But Kepha stood at the door without. Then went out that other disciple, which was known unto the high priest, and spake unto her that kept the door, and brought in Peter. Then saith the damsel that kept the door unto Peter, art not thou also one of his man's disciples? He said, I am not. And the servants and officers stood there, who made a fire of coals, for it was cold, and they warmed themselves. And Kepha stood with them and warmed himself. The high priest then asked YHWH of his disciples and of his doctrine. YHWH answered him, I spake openly to the world. I ever taught in the synagogue, and in the temple, whither the Jews always resort. In secret have I said nothing. Why askest thou me? Ask them which heard me. What have said unto them? Behold, they know what I said. And when he had thus spoken, one of the officers which stood by struck YHWH with the palm of his hand, saying, Answerest thou the high priest so? YHWH answered him, If I have spoken evil, bear witness of the evil. But if well, why smitest thou me? Now Annas had sent him bound to Caiaphas the high priest, and Shimon Kapha stood and warmed himself. They said therefore unto him, Art not thou also one of his disciples? And he denied it and said, I am not. One of the servants of the high priest, being his kinsman, whose ear Kapha had cut off, said, Did not I see thee in the garden with him? Kapha then denied again, and immediately the cock crew. Now, what's significant about this? Now, the cameras are on, if there was cameras, but everything's under the lights now. It's game time now. Everything's under the lights. So now Messiah becomes an enemy of the state. Y'all see that? Is that true or not? Messiah is, at this point, an enemy of the state. So he's a wanted man. And so they're asking anybody that has information that knew him, that was one of his followers, to stand up. And everybody's scared to do that. Why? Because they don't want to be arrested. So Peter's denying that he knows him. And just like the Messiah said, you're going to deny you know me. That's right. So they're like, nah, I don't know him. I don't know nothing about him. Okay. Now, notice, John did not deny him. The high priest knew John. The lady at the door knew John. And John brought Peter in. So John wasn't scared to die with Messiah. But it wasn't their time. But the fear factor, again, brethren, fear, we know, first came into existence when Adam and Eve sinned against the Father and believed the devil, right? Fear came. Fear has been here ever since. And our enemies play on fear. They create nightmarish scenarios to try to create fear. That's what they do. But when you are in the Messiah, and there's no more fear of death, then you're not scared of anything. Once you overcome a fear of death, nothing bothers you. Then you can move from wisdom and not fear. Okay, you can move from wisdom and not fear. Later on, when they had Kapha arrested and 16 soldiers around him after John was beheaded, Kapha was asleep. He wasn't scared. He was asleep. They had him chained up with 16 soldiers guarding him. 4 in the cell with him. And he was delivered. Remember? He was delivered. He wasn't scared. And the angel had to shake him. Get up. And the chains fell off, and he walked right past all 16 guards, and they didn't even know he wasn't there. He wasn't scared. Okay, matter of fact, he thought it was glory to pay the penalty of death for the Messiah, which he ended up doing as Messiah showed him. Praise the Most High. Okay, so here, though, he was scared. Praise the Most High. He was scared. All right. Verse 27, Peter then denied again, and immediately the cock crew. Then led they YHWH from Caiaphas into the hall of judgment, and it was early, and they themselves went not into the judgment hall, lest they should be defiled, but that they might eat the Passover. Pilate then went out unto them and said, What accusation bring ye against this man? Now, this now shows the connection between Caesar's government and the coons. There's a connection between Caesar's government and the coons, which is what permitted the coons to make money. See that? That's in fact what they said. He'll take away both our place and our nation, which means our power. He'll take away both our place and our nation. Don't get it twisted. Religious leaders, especially in Christianity, are more concerned with power and money than truth. I don't care how charismatic they are. When you start to see them look and collect money, you already know what side they're on. When they're looking for money to build and buy and build buildings and say, we need our own building and we need to buy this truck so we can do the ministry. That's, brethren, you already know. Okay, you already know. And for the love of that money and that power and their control, they will sell their mother if they need to. Because they're not giving that up. Okay, they're not giving that up. If they sitting in a comfortable house playing a violin and doing all this, they ain't giving that up. Mm-mm. They'll front all day, every day to make sure they keep that. Okay. All right. Gospel of John, chapter 18. How'd they answer? They answered and said unto him, if he were not a malefactor, we would not have delivered him up unto thee. So they did not have a specific charge. So they arrested the Messiah and held him without charge. Let me ask you, brethren, in recent years, have we known any governments to arrest people and hold them without charge? Have there been any people that's been arrested and held without charge? Like you can't walk out. You're under arrest for what? I don't know. That's right. You've been getting a steady dose daily of ICE arresting U.S. citizens. They were supposed to be, if I'm not mistaken, they were supposed to be arresting illegal aliens. But we now know they arrest U.S. citizens without charge. And they'll hold them in places and don't tell nobody where they are. They could be any place from the Alligator Alley down here in Florida to Texas to some other country, and you don't even know. And there's no charge. Sometimes they'll say, oh, they're with the Latin Kings. No evidence, no charge, just arrested. There was one, I think they did a movie, but there was one dude, he was from Chicago, Puerto Rican man. And they arrested him after 9/11 because he had went to the Middle East, and they said that he trained with Osama bin Laden. Whether it's true or not, okay. But he was an American citizen. He had nothing to do with 9/11. They arrested him and held him for several years in solitary, torturing him and waterboarding him, and no charge. No charge. Okay, no charge. So, brethren, we're living in the time. Same thing. They arrested Messiah. They didn't have a charge, but apparently they didn't need one for Pilate to bring him in there. Okay. Verse 31. Then said Pilate unto them, take ye him and judge him according to your law. The Jews therefore said unto him, it is not lawful for us to put any man to death. Now, question, y'all. Question. I thought the Jews, doesn't Moses have several instances where a death penalty would be administered? Doesn't he? Like if two women were having sex or two men were having sex in Moses, there was a death penalty, right? Okay. Didn't he have a death penalty? Like if somebody was to kidnap another person, they call it what do they call it? Stealing, right? Men stealing. Death penalty. So how come these brothers couldn't put Messiah to death themselves? Why couldn't they do it? Why did they say that? It's not lawful for us. Well, Moses said it was lawful. So why couldn't they put anybody to death? Why? Why did they say that, brethren? Why? Why did they say it's not lawful for us? No. Okay, I hear y'all, but okay, let me just come out and tell you. They were under Roman law. They weren't under Hebrew law in that area. They could not, under Roman control, they were not allowed to put anybody to death. They were under Roman law. Only Caesar could put people to death. That's right. So again, it goes back to chapter 8 when they told the Messiah, we will be Abraham's seed and were never in bondage to any man. They were already in bondage. They didn't even acknowledge they were already in bondage. Romans ruled them. And they had been under rule from the Romans, the Greeks, right? The Medes and the Persians and the Babylonians. They've been under rule. They were permitted to stay in their land at the moment, but they weren't permitted to follow all of the rules, because at this point now they're under Roman law. That's right. That's right. So the practice of following the law was only able to be administered if it didn't go against Roman law. And brethren, I think we're under the same situation now, right? We are permitted to obey our Father as long as it doesn't cross with U.S. law or international law, right? So we were talking about the Shabbat, right? So we're in our enemy's land. We can obey the Shabbat unless our boss tells us different, correct? What about the feast? We could keep the feast. Not in Jerusalem, we can't, though. That's where feasts are supposed to be kept. But if we decided to keep it in our enemy's land, we still can't keep it unless we get permission from off of work from our boss. Now, if you retired or independently wealthy, you can do whatever you want, right? Because that doesn't go against U.S. law. But if you just said to your boss, okay, let's say it's new moon on March 20th, because that's when the next one coming. It's new moon on March 20th. We want to have a feast. It's the new moon. We're going to meet, let's say, in Pennsylvania. I'm just using that. We're going to meet in Pennsylvania and celebrate the new moon. And let's say the new moon is on a Thursday. Can you just leave and not tell your boss where you're going and just disappear to celebrate the new moon? What about 2 weeks later when it's Passover and you got a whole 8 days? So can you just leave and say, we're going to celebrate the Passover and talk to you when I get back? See? So you see what I'm saying? So we're in our enemy's land. So as long as what we believe doesn't cross with our enemy's laws, we're good. And that's part of the mark of the beast. And the mark of the beast is not complicated. Look at what happened in Daniel. Daniel is the prime example here. So in Daniel, first they made a statue, an image, and they demanded that people worship that image. Remember, right? So that's Daniel chapter 3. They demanded that on pain of death, that you worship that man-made image. You make a religion out of the man-made image. Then Daniel chapter 6, they made prayer illegal. They tried to find something on Daniel, couldn't, so they went to the king, and they made the king say, we want to worship man. If somebody does not worship man for the next 30 days, they'll be thrown into the den of lions. That's what they were saying, right? Nobody should offer a petition to anybody but you, king. Again, the worship of man. So if you don't worship man, your religion is illegal. So then it was at odds with the Father's commandments. And Daniel chose the commandments like Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah chose the commandments. So where are we headed? We're headed to a situation where if you don't worship man, you're going to be on pain of death. That's the image, y'all. Because Christianity is a man-made religion. If you don't worship one of the three man-made religions, Islam, Christianity, or Judaism, if you're not in none of those, then you are liable to be put to death. Because those religions are the mark. Man-made religions. Both the statute of Daniel 3 and the law against prayer in Daniel 6 show you that's exactly what's coming. So that your religious practice is going to be at odds with the state. At odds with the state. And why? What guys? Well, the guys that they've been using very easily is terrorism. The combination of anti-terrorist and patriotism, right? So if you don't worship like everybody else, you're not patriotic, and you might be a terrorist. You catching it? It's not hard, man. The devil's not original. He's not original. And the Father always calls out what he getting ready to do. Okay. Always calls out what the devil trying to do. So there you go. It's a combination of worship of man, which is the image, and refusal to allow the government laws to stop you from worshiping your God. Okay. See, that's why somebody said, well, what about with the feast? Don't we have to keep the feast? No, you keep the feast in Jerusalem, and you can't go to Jerusalem right now. It's been taken over by the heathen. The Most High knew that. So when we get into our land, yes, we're going to keep the feast. But you can't do it now. Somebody said, well, we have to. No, you don't have to. If you had to, you'd be able to do it. Feasts are kept at Jerusalem. You go in there now, them Muslims and them Jews will kill you. You know what I'm saying? They will kill you. Talking about you a Hebrew. They don't care about that. They started to try to set up a settlement in Dimona. What happened to that? Come on, y'all. Nah, man. When it's our time, we don't need no permission. It's going to be our time. But we're not worshiping another God. We're not worshiping another God. See? That we won't do. We're keeping the covenant of the Father. So here, they had no charge, except he was a threat to their system. So they brought him to their homie, the Romans, and now the homie got to find a charge because he knows they want to put this man to death. Okay, so let's take a look. Verse 32, John 18:32. That the saying of YHWH might be fulfilled, which he spake, signifying what death he should die. Then Pilate entered into the judgment hall again and called YHWH and said unto him, art thou the king of the Jews? YHWH answered him, sayest thou this thing of thyself, or did others tell it thee of me? Pilate answered, am I a Jew? Thine own nation and the chief priests have delivered thee unto me. What hast thou done? YHWH answered, my kingdom. See, this is where they got him. This is where they got him. He started right there. Look, my kingdom. Testing. Let's start here. What's wrong with that statement? What's wrong with starting a statement in front of a Roman official? My kingdom. What's the problem? What's the problem? My kingdom, he said. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? What? That's right, right. Because there's no king but Caesar to them. Okay, now that's like you and me. We getting brought into a prison, and they say, are you serving our government? And you say, I serve the government of the Heavenly Father. And they say, well, you got another government that you serving? Who you working for? Who's this Heavenly Father? That's right. That's treason. Okay. That's why they want you to pledge allegiance to the flag. They want you to do what? Pledge allegiance to the flag. You're following that? You hear what it said now. If you don't pledge allegiance, it'll be treason. Okay, there you go. So if you talk about the Messiah coming to establish his kingdom and destroy this earth, they can bring you in for what? Treason. Messiah didn't even mince words. He said, my kingdom is not of this world. Then he said, if my kingdom were of this world, then would my servants fight, that I should not be delivered to the Jews. But now is my kingdom not from hence. When they asked him, wilt thou at this time restore the kingdom to Israel? He said, it's not for you to know the times or the seasons. This was the time of the drinking of the cup for the sacrifice for the sins of his people. It wasn't the time to establish the kingdom. But the fact that he was going to be raised from the dead guarantees the kingdom. Guarantees the kingdom. Okay. But at this point, he said, my kingdom's not of this world. So right now, he is the sacrifice for the sins of his people, and that's the capacity he's standing there with. Verse 37. Pilate therefore said unto him, art thou a king then? See? Art thou a king then? YHWH answered, thou sayest that I am a king. To this end was I born, and for this cause came I into the world, that I should bear witness unto the truth. Everyone that is of the truth heareth my voice. What did he tell? What did he pray to the Father? What did he say? John 17. Sanctify them through thy truth. Thy word is truth. Not complicated. See, people make this complicated because they say, well, what is the word then? Is it the book of Enoch the word? Is the book of Jubilees the word? Is Jasher the word? No, they're not the word. And he was being persecuted not because he bore witness of Jasher or Enoch or Jubilees. Okay, he wasn't being persecuted for that. He was being persecuted because he bore witness of Moses, David, Samuel, Zechariah, the real Hebrew prophets. He bore witness to the truth. Sanctify them through thy truth. Thy word is the truth. Brethren, we're not going to be looking to create any revolutionary movement with our own set of laws. You know, the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense had a set of laws. They had a set of demands. Okay. We wouldn't do that. Malcolm X, when he created the African, what do you call it? The African Association for Unity, he created a charter. They created a charter for that. Making an official organization. We don't have no charter. Our charter is the covenant. The word is the Constitution. So we seek the word. Okay, so that's going to put you at odds with anything that's not it. Praise the Most High. They that are of the truth will hear his voice. He wasn't worried about how many he got, how many he baptized. They that are of the truth will hear our voice, brethren. Praise the Most High. Verse 38. What is truth? See, Pilate goes right into what? Philosophy. That's what men do. What is truth? And when he had said this, he went out again unto the Jews and said unto them, I find in him no fault at all. So he was convicted just being in the presence of the Holy Messiah, this heathen man. So he goes out to the Jews and he says, listen, ain't nothing wrong with this guy, man. He ain't no threat. But they weren't going to let him go. Verse 39. But ye have a custom that I should release unto you one at the Passover. Will ye therefore that I release unto you the King of the Jews? Then cried they all again, saying, not this man, but Barabbas. Now, Barabbas was a robber. Now, question. I'm going to say it to you very slow. Okay, here's the question. I'm going to say this to you very slow. The dude's name was Barabbas. What does that name mean? Translated from Greek. Barabbas. What does that name mean? And he was a robber. He said in another gospel, it says for sedition and murder, he was arrested. So what does his name mean? Barabbas. That's right. That's right. That's right. Thank you, delivery boy. Thank you, Akwan Baya. Praise Yah. So his bar is the Greek word for son. In the Old Testament, it's Ben, like Ben Yamin, son of the right hand. That's son. But in Greek, it's bar. So bar is son. Abba means father, son of the father. So you had a robber trying to be representing son of the father. They wanted the robber. They wanted the fake one. They did not want the real deal Holyfield. They wanted the fake one. See that? That's deep. They did not want the real one. So, hey, let's ask you right now. Who's Barabbas today? Who's the Barabbas right now? Who's the fake one? The one that looks like the lamb. Who's the fake one that they want? The people want that one. They don't want the real ones. Who's the real ones? They don't want the real ones. They want Barabbas. That's right. Christianity. That's right. Christianity is the fake one. Christianity is the robber and the murderer. Am I lying to you? We just went through the laundry list, didn't we? Weren't they robbing and murdering in what is now Haiti, Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, Jamaica, Cuba, weren't they robbing in what is now Canada, the United States? Weren't they robbing and raping when they was in Mexico, Central America, South America? Weren't they robbing and raping when they went to Australia? Weren't they robbing and raping down there in South Africa? They've been robbing and raping. They are Barabbas. The real ones, they don't want. The real Hebrews, the real representations of the Father, they don't want. They want Barabbas. They want Barabbas. See, that's deep. It is deep. It's powerful. I don't think it's any coincidence that his name was Barabbas. That's what I thought. I always thought. I said, wait a minute, nobody picked this up. The boy's name was Barabbas. Like one of the disciples is called Bartholomew, son of Tholomew. Okay, Bartholomew. Okay. Yeah. Praise the Most High. There was one of the early disciples that went with Paul. What was his name? It started with Bar, and he was called son of consolation. He was a Levite priest. Y'all know who I'm talking about? He was a Levite priest, and what was his name? Hold on. They gave him the right hand of fellowship. Hold on, I'm gonna tell you. Barnabas, that's right, Barnabas. Nabas means consolation. Bar, son of consolation, Barnabas. He was a Levite priest. Bar, son of consolation. That's his name, Barnabas. This guy was Barabbas, see, son of the Father. He was a robber and a murderer and created sedition, and they wanted him. They did not want Messiah, they wanted him. And it has not changed. They still want him. They created a whole Caucasian European Barabbas. The real one, they don't want. The disciples of the real one, the children of Israel, they don't want. They want Barabbas. Robbers, liars, murderers, they want Barabbas. There you go. Praise the Most High. That, my friends, was chapter 18. Oh, we're not finished yet. We got to get into chapter 19. We're going to do that. Praise the Most High. May the Most High bless you and keep you. May he cause his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May he lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Until next time, family, please continue to pray for the Father's Spirit to inherit all of us, his people, that we might be prepared for what we know is coming. Sure.